to Freeway Ricky Ross. And, of course, Rick Ross is been recognized as a major pawn of the CIA drug war game. He was a pioneer in the crack cocaine trade in Los Angeles. Ross harvested millions of dollars a day as an unknown participant of the CIA and U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency ops. And then long after he got out of it, they still set him up and sent him to prison. And, okay, what are you doing putting up with a government that went and hired him? See, there's no outrage about that. There's no outrage about the big banks laundering $386 billion in 2 years. Bloomberg reported 2 banks alone. Wells Fargo, Wachovia, $380+ billion. Type it in. Big banks laundered $300+ billion. It'll pop up Bloomberg, AP, you name it, from 4 years ago. That's just one admission. They paid a $111 million fine. That's like if you rob a bank for $1 million, paying a $3,000 fine. It's a slap on the wrist. See, they always flush the people that work for him. He was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of trying to purchase more than 100 kilograms of cocaine from a federal agent. Ross became the subject of controversy later that year when a series of articles by journalist Gary Webb in the San Jose Mercury brought to light a connection between one of Ross's cocaine sources and the CIA as part of the Iran-Contra scandal. His sentencing was later reduced to less than 20 years and released in September 2009. He's finally off the probation, the harassment, all of it, able to put his book out that's excellent. He is currently in the process of creating a feature-length film for his life story, Cracking the System. I admire Rick Ross because I talked to Gary Webb about it. When this came out about the CIA and his trial, he didn't really know about it. He was blown away. Everything suddenly made sense. They said, just shut up, don't cooperate with this reporter and people, and we'll go easy. He didn't, so they gave him life in prison. That was clearly done politically, so it was reduced. But it doesn't matter. The issue is he's repented of it. The CIA and the New World Order haven't. So he joins us now until the end of the transmission, the next hour and 45 minutes. We'll open the phones up for Rick Ross next hour. But, Rick, it was like sunny and 80 degrees a few days ago. Sorry you got to be in Austin when this global warming cold front hits. But thank you so much for coming.
No, I'm just blown away to be here. I remember when I was in prison and you tried to come down to see me and make sure that I was okay. And it was one of my dreams to sit here with you in the studio, and here I am today. And I'm just blown away, man. And thanks for still having me here.
Oh, it's awesome to have you. And you're speaking to college students all over the country. You're speaking to the Black Congressional Congress Press Club. You're at the premiere with Renner of the film. I mean, you're having a big effect now. And that is so exciting that you can really educate people, because back when this all first came out, people didn't believe the CIA was bringing drugs in.
I didn't believe it. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Even when Gary reported the story, and I was like, oh, this guy Gary, what is he talking about? I was involved with the CIA, and no way. It wasn't until the CIA themselves told me that they were involved and put out their report. I mean, that was when it really hit me that, hey, Gary was right, you know, because, I mean, it was just hard for me to believe. How can a little guy like me, who wasn't supposed to succeed, couldn't read, couldn't write, high school dropout, I mean, how could I, you know, be involved with something this big? I mean, it was just like totally shocking to me. You know, I'll be honest with you.
Let's start at the beginning. In the few minutes we have before break, start at the beginning of your life, get into how you got into drug dealing, how you suddenly found this incredible source that made you the biggest dealer on the West Coast, and then we'll lead right through your trial, prison, the drug war, and phone calls.
All right, let's do that. Well, you know, I was born here in Texas, Tyler. My mom decided that she wanted to try Los Angeles, give us an opportunity to have more than what she had. She was a maid here in Tyler, so she moved to L.A. I moved in during the Watts riot. Right when the riots broke out, I got to see the Black Panthers, and you know, I used to want to be a Panther. So I go to school and, you know, trying to be like any other normal kid, you know, want to be a police officer, a firefighter, or airplane pilot. Started playing tennis in high school, you know, did pretty good, made All-City, was offered scholarships, but I couldn't read or write. So when it was time to take the scholarships, I couldn't go to college. So I found myself with the one thing that I thought that I could count on was my tennis to get me out the ghetto. And I found that was no longer an option for me. So I found myself back in the streets in South Central Los Angeles. So I'm walking around trying to figure out, what was I going to do with myself, and couldn't get a job, even though I was a very hard worker. Had no problem, rolling up my sleeves and doing whatever, car washing, taking out trash, any number of things. Just anything that I could do to start making a living, I was willing to do it. Well, one of my friends came from college, and he had this stuff called cocaine.
Stay right there. We're going to come back there and start with your friend from college coming back. Freeway Rick Ross is our guest, the Untold Autobiography. You're getting the big exclusive inside the CIA drug-dealing operations of the crack cocaine epidemic. Straight ahead, I'm Alex Jones. Freeway Rick Ross became the biggest cocaine dealer on the West Coast on record and became the heart of an investigation that later the CIA Inspector General had to admit that the CIA was involved bringing in the majority of the cocaine, at least the West Coast. It's much bigger than that. Mena, Arkansas, I've interviewed the pilots that were there unloading the cocaine, not just Tosh Plumlee, who's on record Iran-Contra testimony, but just so many others that were there and saw governors, saw vice presidents who would be there personally offloading aircraft with the cocaine. I mean, that's what, and then, I mean, if local kids saw it, they'd kill them. Remember Mena, Arkansas and all that? And then if cops talked about that, they'd kill the cops. I mean, a lot of people have died over this information. I hope you understand this. And everybody today is like, yeah, we know they bring it in. Well, wait, we didn't know this back in the 90s. There'd been the heroin coming in out of Southeast Asia, but they'd blame a colonel or somebody. This is organized. This is a short segment. I want to go back to you, Rick Ross. It's great to have you here, my friend. I appreciate your courage and you not selling out and getting that longer sentence, for not backing down. But let's get into now where you left off. You can't get a job, that pays well. You don't have a criminal record. You could have got a scholarship, but you couldn't read and write for tennis. And then your friend comes back from college. Yeah,
so he introduces me to cocaine for the first time. But what I also noticed, Alex, when I was in prison, I did a lot of thinking back. And I can remember before I started selling cocaine, they started coming out with movies like Superfly and almost like priming you up for this lifestyle that you're about to get into. So when my friend comes and shows me cocaine, I'm interested because I saw Superfly.
What you hit is key. The CIA's now declassified that. Rock and roll, the drug culture, the CIA delivered the first suitcases of LSD. White kids weren't smoking marijuana. They delivered it. I mean, it's incredible. They primed the whole deal.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like they get your mind ready so that when you get the opportunity that you're interested in.
It's called predictive programming. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It's just what you're saying is absolutely right.
So when my friend comes and he shows me this stuff, never seen it before. It was yellowish white. And I'm like, well, I thought cocaine was supposed to be white. He's like, no, man, this is it. So he introduces it to me. He gives me a little bit, like $50 worth. He said, go and see what you can do with it. So I go around the neighborhood and I'm asking everybody. Nobody knows what it is. I mean, I'm going all over South Central LA. Finally, I run into a guy. He was a pimp. And he says, let me see it. And he takes it and he cooks it up. And he says, oh, yeah, it's pretty good stuff. And that's how I got started selling cocaine. And it went from there to this one person would buy from me, and then another one would come, and he would introduce me to somebody else until some days I'm making $3 million a day.
So you got in on the ground floor of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally ground. Was totally a novice. I had never smoked pot. At that time, I was still tinkering on being a tennis player, like, I don't know if you're going to make it in tennis, but you got to do something. My mom's on my back right now because I'm living with my mom. I'm not bringing in any income, and she's really going hard on me. You're a bum. You're not going to be doing nothing with your life. So I desperately want to do something now. I need to make some money somewhere. So when this opportunity came, I thought that it was a blessing from God. I started off just helping Mike, who was my friend. I'd make the money for him, give him all the money, and pretty soon I know the business. It goes from there, from making $50 a week to, like I said, $3 million a day sometimes.
In fact, I was reading sometimes you were bringing in $30 million a deal every few days.
Well, yeah. If you add up 10 days, you do 10 days worth of dealing, you're talking about $10 million or more. No, like $30 million.
And this is 1980s money.
Yeah, 80s money. 84-ish, 85, 86.
So you were there when folks didn't even know what cocaine was.
In my community, nobody knew what cocaine was.
Yeah, it was a rich white guy drug.
Well, that's how I felt. You know, I felt that when I first started selling cocaine, I felt that it was another, because I've been discriminated against. You know, I've been to a hospital and they said, oh, no, you can't sit right there because this is a white-only section. You have to go to the back. So when I started selling cocaine, that's how I felt about cocaine, that it was another one of those things that they said, no, this is for white people and you guys can't have it. So I felt like I was bringing cocaine to my community to give us something.
But the CIA said, oh, you blacks want it? We're going to make something special for you. Here's how you make crack.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Makes it hit harder, be more addictive, turn people into zombies.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. Exactly how it turned out.
Unbelievable. We're going to break it all down. 18-minute segment coming up. You're going to get the floor. Get ready to roll. Just go through it all. Rick Ross is our guest. Ground level of the CIA crack cocaine epidemic. And then all of a sudden, years after he's out of it, they want to get rid of all the loose ends. They're trying to throw him in jail. Turns out all the people involved, they all knew what was going on. The CIA came to visit him. Said, shut your mouth. Well, now, Rick Ross, you've got the floor. You've told the story. Biggest cocaine dealer in West Coast history. When it came out in your trial that the prosecution knew, the government knew, the DEA knew, the CIA knew, that you were one of their main distributors, but you didn't even know. I want to get into that relationship and more. But you'd gotten to the point in a few years to where, tell the story. Did you ever use? Why were you so successful? And then go ahead and walk through everything that happened. And then now what your message is to the youth about what's really going on. Then we'll talk about Gary Webb.
Well, I did start using for a short time. You know, I got up to a point to where I probably had about $8,000 or $9,000. I thought I was rich. So, you know, when you're rich, you start experimenting, you know, with the drugs. And I looked up, all my money was gone. So I immediately quit using. You know, I went back and regrouped. You know, I learned that from tennis. When you're doing something wrong, you go back and you figure out what you're doing wrong. So I figured out that I couldn't use anymore. If I wanted to be rich, I had to stop using. So I stopped using, and I went on to get rich. Well, I made a lot of money. You know, like I said, I made $3 million a day sometimes. And then it got to the point to where I started seeing the effects that cocaine was having inside of my community. And it wasn't the effects that I initially thought that it was going to have. You know, I started seeing people pushing baskets. I started seeing women walking the streets and women doing anything to get high. And I started to rethink my position. That was around 88, 89. At that time, I threw my hands up. I said, you know what? I'm through with the cocaine business. I got enough money. I got more money now than I ever thought that I would have in my life. I got businesses. So I walked away. Well, what happened is the government came back and indicted me for the things that I'd already done. Went to prison, did 5 years in prison. I got out. Immediately after I got out, they had Danilo Blandon started to call me. And his goal was to get me back inside of drugs, but I didn't want to go back. I was trying to go straight. He hounded me for like 6 months to introduce him to one of my friends. Once I made the introduction, my friend handed him a bag of money. And the cops swooped in, arrested all of us, and they got me for brokering the deal, for making the introduction, saying that I knew that they were going to be doing a drug deal, and for that reason that I aided and abetted the crime. Doing that crime, they gave me a life sentence. While I was sitting in jail doing this life sentence, fighting my case, I was approached by a reporter, Gary Webb. Well, Gary came down and he saw me. He started talking about that I was in something bigger than, you know, what I thought I was. But, you know, also, too, Alex, that there were some cops on my case. They called themselves the Freeway Task Force. And those cops were robbing and stealing and, you know, they let the dog bite me while I was handcuffed. They got indicted as well. So I meet Gary Webb, and he was like, oh, man, this is bigger than what you think it is. I'm thinking that they're talking about the crooked cops. You know, it's like 35, 40 cops that's running around robbing drug dealers, taking their money, and they became drug dealers themselves, really, because they was taking the drugs from one person, planting them on another person, and selling them to this person, and just a criminal enterprise. I mean, the whole war on drugs is just like one big hoax of one person benefiting this one, another one benefiting that way. But at the end of the day, guys like myself get caught in the middle, and I believe that we're the ones who's paying the biggest price. Not necessarily myself, because when I was in prison, I couldn't cry about my time. You know, if they'd have gave me the life sentence, I'd have had to do the rest of my life in prison. I could have accepted that because I knew that what I was doing. You know, I knew I was selling drugs, and I knew that I shouldn't have been selling drugs after a period of time.
You know, that's the key to integrity and sanity, I've learned, is admitting when you've been wrong, admitting and owning up to it. But then there's the giant hypocrisy. They're the ones bringing the drugs in, and they're the ones putting you in jail. That's 1,000 times worse, and they never own up to any of it. In fact, they sit up there like they're God, and they're clean, and they're good. That makes me want to throw up.
Well, you know, that's what really, really, like, started to affect me, you know, when I was in prison. And I'm like, once everything came out and I interviewed with the CIA, you know, the CIA came down to my jail cell.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. But let's also go back to your trial when you learn about all this with Gary Webb. Tell that story, because Webb talked about how he got threatened out in the hall, threatened to kill him and stuff. They didn't just threaten to kill his kids. I mean, the feds themselves that were there, not just the CIA, they were basically all in on it. It's
the
just...
DA, I mean, they sandbagged us doing trial. We're going to trial. So we have there's a period in court where you get to interview the informant, because we never talk to the informant. We don't know what the informant's going to say. You don't have no clue about what the person who's going to testify against you going to say. So the court has a thing where they call a pre-trial hearing, where the informant is supposed to come to like a little room. I couldn't be there, but my lawyer was supposed to be there, and Gary was supposed to be there. Well, anyway, Blandon comes to this hearing, and when they get in the room and my lawyer wants to ask him some questions, and the guy said, everything that I got to say, I'm going to say during trial. So we don't know what this guy is going to say. So we start...
You're unable to ever do a deposition.
No deposition with this guy. So when we get to trial, my lawyer don't have a clue what's going on. All the information that Gary has, we don't have this information. And Gary's not giving it to us. He didn't give us this information at first, because Gary knew I had the relationship with LA Times. So I felt that Gary was worried about me leaking his information to Jesse Katz at LA Times, because, you know, me and Jesse Katz still had a relationship where we talk once in a while. So Gary didn't give it to us. We start trial, and in the middle of trial, my lawyer keeps running back and forth to Gary. Gary's in the audience. So he's at the trial table with me, and he gets up from the trial table, and he goes and he talks to Blandon, and then he goes back and he asks Gary, because Gary's feeding him like little bits and pieces.
And that was smart. That way, the LA Times, now admitted, run by the CIA, the editor CIA, trying to cover all this up. You didn't know that. He could only ask it while it was happening live, so he would get the intel, and they couldn't spin it.
Exactly. I mean, he had to do it like that almost, because I may have given it to Jesse, not knowing, you know, because I didn't know the scope of this. Believe me, I had no idea. You know, they tried to say that I told Gary how to put it together. You know, they said that, right?
Yes.
That oh, Rick Ross dreamed this all up and put this together and fed it to Gary and got Gary to buy into it. But I didn't know none of this. They gave me more credit than I deserved.
Who would have thought the LA Times, you know, was involved, you know? That's how it works, though. You're going to take down a culture and bring in and make trillions off drugs. You got to run the newspapers.
Yeah, you have to. You have to. And that's what's so amazing. Even right now today, you know, it baffles me that people don't know this. I'm like, the CIA admitted it. They got a report. You can go to their website, and the report is on their website, and people don't know it.
By their Inspector General. Please continue.
So we in court, and Gary's asking my lawyer this, and then the judge recognized what's going on, and she was like, well, why you keep talking to this reporter? Why are you running back and forth to him in the courtroom? I want you to stand here and do this. We're not on a fishing expedition, because, you know, Gary was asking about certain names, Enrique Ramirez. And then Blandon talks about, well, my boss goes on a fishing trip with George Bush, and when they come back, they say the ends justify the means. And all this type of stuff. But this stuff is still not making sense.
It's all Machiavelli, yeah.
To me, it doesn't make any sense. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm learning about the court system while I'm there, but, you know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm still a novice. You know, this is a guy that couldn't read. You know, 2 years ago, I couldn't read. So I'm still learning what's going on. So then eventually we finish trial. They give me the life sentence. And a couple months later, Gary's story come out. Gary sends me a copy. I get a copy the day before it comes out. I call Gary on the phone, and then we start to talk, and he starts to tell me, you know, about the CIA being involved, about the Contras. Because, you know, I really didn't know what the Contras was. I had no clue what the Contras was. Definitely did not know that they were backed by the CIA and Ronald Reagan and George Bush had no clue that they was backed by that. I did know that Danilo and these guys and all of his friends were fighting a war in their country. Didn't know what the war was over. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's illiterate still. I'm still illiterate. Had never read a book.
Well, look, this stuff's complex, and you're busy anyways. It's come out Ronald Reagan, not defending him. He didn't know. It was George Herbert Walker Bush running all that as well, keeping it from him. So if the president didn't know, Rick, you can't blame you for not knowing.
Yeah, so I'm still a novice to all the stuff that's going on. But when it comes out, Gary runs it down to me, and he starts to tell me, and I'm like, oh, this guy, Gary, he's out there. So the next thing I know, a couple of days later, the OIG is at my cell, the CIA is at my cell, Congresswoman Maxine Waters is there. I mean, it just starts to pour. All these people are coming and coming. I'm like, what is going on?
Let's talk about that. What did the CIA say to you when they came to your cell?
Well, they started to talk to me about how much drugs I sold, who did I get my drugs from, did I have a contract with the CIA? And I was like, no, I ain't never been with the CIA. I don't know nothing about the CIA.
They know you were compartmentalized. They wanted to act like, well, he refutes the story.
Kind of, yeah. That's what they pretty much said. And did I get drugs from Danilo Blandon? How long had I been getting drugs from him? That kind of stuff. And I was like, well, you guys want me to talk to you. Why you don't straighten my court sentence out? You know, I got a life sentence. Will you straighten my court sentence out? No, we don't have anything to do with that. We're not going to help you with your courts. If you want to talk to us, you just talk to us, and this is how we're going to do it. So that was pretty much that.
By the way, they could have snapped their fingers and got you out in a few years.
Yeah, I already know. But, you know, I wasn't cooperating with what they wanted me to do. So
well, that's why you're a hero overall, because more and more you had a chance once it came out that it had been going on to throw Gary Webb under the bus. You wouldn't do it.
Oh no! I respect what Gary does, what he did, and even.
Well, you're right. He's still alive. I mean, he's living on through
through a story. Absolutely, you know, and people, you know, they always picking here and there about every little thing, you know, like even with the movie, you know, oh, well, what you didn't like about the movie? How did you like this? And you know, it's like, hey, it's his spirit that people have to respect. I mean, this guy stood up for justice. He felt that. Even though I was selling drugs, that I still had rights that had to be respected and that we should be treated.
You shouldn't be in jail when the CIA sold you the drugs. I've had the pilot on that was flying them in to the military base.
Yeah,
that they were then delivering to you every week.
Yeah, and what I didn't feel that way about myself, but I feel that way about guys right now in prison, because right now we have guys in prison that's been in prison 25 and 30 years, never shot anybody, never carried a gun. All they did was sold a lot of drugs and got a lot of time, and they're still there right now today.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the guns are down at the street level where dealers might get robbed or something. Up at the top, other than bodyguards, I mean, were there ever guns?
No, you didn't really need guns. The only time I would carry a gun if I went to a club or something like that and I think somebody might be going to kidnap me or try to do something to me was only self-defense. Never, I mean, if you got more money than you can ever spend, what are you going to do with a gun? You know, guys who carry guns robbing people. That's because they're broke. When you got plenty of money, the only way you want a gun is to protect your money.
That's right. That's what good guns are for, is protecting your family and your money. I got my mind on my family, and I got my hand on my gun. We'll be right back with Freeway Ricky Ross. Freeway Ricky Ross is our guest. He, of course, is played by a fictional, well, not a fictional character. He's played by an actor in an account of the real-life events that happened. It's almost like a documentary in Kill the Messenger, the hit movie out about the late Gary Webb. I want to hit this right now before we talk about what the CIA said to you, about your message to young people, about where you see the country and the world going. Then I want to open the phones up because they'll ask a lot of questions that I didn't think to ask. We're also going to send out a Twitter hashtag so folks can respond, just whatever they want to come up with, to ask questions of Rick Ross, who's in studio with us. But in the few minutes we have before break, Rick, we've talked a lot about this. He was coming out with a new book. He was talking to me. He wasn't ready to come back on until his new book came out. He wanted me to put an online bibliography up of a bunch of documents. He was talking to a bunch of other people. He was talking to you. I talked to you right after they killed him, or he committed suicide, as they say, in jail. You didn't buy it. He told you they'd been breaking in his house. He'd had to move. They'd threatened him. I liked how the movie basically implies they killed him, but it ends before they kill him. This story of him shooting himself twice in the head, what did Gary Webb talk to you before he died? I mean, he talked to me about how he was very excited. He had all the proof to back up what he said.
Yeah, he told me he was going to keep going, that he was going to get to the bottom of it, and that he wasn't going to stop until he was done with it. And he did tell me about a new book that he was working on, and he asked me if I would be a part of that as well. So, I mean, you know, I was talking to Kevin Booth when Kevin Booth is the one that told me about what happened to Gary, and I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. And right after when I spoke to you, you know, and that's when you asked me, you know, on air, was I thinking about committing suicide? And I was like, no, where did that come from? And I didn't really understand what you was doing until after I went back to my cell and I thought about it. What you were doing was making sure that everybody knew that I was thinking right, that I wasn't planning on killing myself, and that I was stable and whatnot. And
yeah, I'm never going to commit suicide. You're never going to commit suicide?
No, never.
So if you get shot twice in the head, you didn't do it?
I love absolutely. If I get shot once in the head.
Gary Webb, you think they killed him?
I mean, it looks like it to me. I mean, just I'm not a forensic or anything like that, so I really can't say if it's possible that somebody can shoot themselves in the head twice. But it just seems odd to me that a person could take a gun because I shot a gun before, and you shoot it and the gun does like this here. So, and you take.
Stay there. We're going to talk more about it. Back in 70 seconds. Man, I tell you ought to hear what we're discussing during the breaks. Rick Ross on the ground floor of the CIA crack cocaine epidemic. He wants to get into hip-hop and how it's a weapon. And, of course, a lot of insiders like Professor Griff and others have documented that. I've talked to famous people that I can't say their names, multiple major rock and roll stars who were in the meetings at MTV where they said, sorry, rock and roll's gone. We're bringing in the hip-hop, gangster rap, and we're weaponizing it. That's the word from the Chiefs. And, boy, they've done a job. So that's coming up in the next segment. Getting back to Gary Webb, when you went to the premiere, hung out with Renner, who also helped finance it, did a great job. Knowing the story as good as I do, I was really freaked out because it was so accurate. Obviously, they couldn't show everything, but it was so they really, I think, captured his spirit. I really admire Renner now.
I do too. I do too. And I met Renner at the screening. Me, him, and Michael, and the director, and the head producer. We all took photos and whatnot, and it was just like almost like Gary was there. You know what I'm saying? Gary's wife was there. His kids were there. So for me, it was an opportunity to meet people that I had never met before, but I spoke on the phone. And to meet his wife and his kids, and just the whole environment was like, man, everything that Gary was doing was still alive, you know, to know that he hadn't died.
I wonder how his so-called friends at the newspaper that turned their back on him, I wonder how they feel now being so famous in this film.
Wow, yeah. You know, I spoke to Jesse Katz about his role, you know, inside the film. And, you know, we have Get Jesse inside of our documentary where he apologizes for basically being a hired gun and gunning Gary down. He was saying that that's one of the lowest points that he feel in his journalism, that he did that.
Now, it was the editor of the LA Times that was CIA, though. And
it may have been, but
yeah,
he hired Jesse to.
No, I understand, but it actually comes out in the film because they're saying, well, the LA Times says this. And he goes, well, yeah, but he's CIA, and you know, and of course he was never discredited. That's why they had to kill him, because they tried to kill him in the media, and then that didn't work, so they just killed him.
Well, you know, the internet saved the story. I mean, if it wasn't for the internet, the story would have been dead, you know, from the start. But the thing about it was so good is that it was the first time a major newspaper had ever released a story on the internet. So once it hit that internet, you know, it just started going from person to person to person to person. And, you know, another thing, it was the first time that blacks had ever really came out on the internet the way they did. They really came out and...
Oh, let's talk about that when we come back, and then we'll get into the hip-hop and your message to the young people. But we ought to find those clips like where Mike Rupert confronts the CIA director and Maxine Waters does. You can find it online, like Mike Rupert confronts CIA director, Maxine Waters does. And Deutsch just shuts down and then had to quit after that. I mean, people were mad. They're like, you put this on our streets? That was powerful.
Yeah, yeah. When he came down to South Central at Locke High School.
I want to get your take. We'll start talking about that some.
Well, you know, he came to South Central because it was such an outroar in South Central LA. You know, blacks were mobilizing and they wanted something done. You know, they wanted answers. People had kids in prison, and I mean, you know, it really devastated the black community. You know, right now we have 600,000 black men in prison for selling drugs. No violence, you know, not rapes, not robberies, just drugs. You know, marijuana, cocaine. And these people wanted the answers. They want to know, why were their kids taken away so long? You know, I have about 11 friends that's been in prison right now, 26 years. From selling drugs, 20, maybe even 30, some of them. So people want answers. And Dutch felt that it would be better to address it than to let it keep simmering. And a big mistake he made, you know, by coming to South Central and confronting those people, because they really gave it to him.
We're going to play the clips of Mike Ruppert and others. And I guess it was Maxine Waters visit you in your cell. Who was the congresswoman that was there at that
Juanita McDowell. Maxine Waters was there, too.
That's right. Okay, I'm going from memory here.
They both was there.
But they did find the clips. We'll play those when we come back. Other points you want to make, and then I know you want to get into hip-hop, that you say is the new crack cocaine epidemic culture war machine. And then I've got some amazing testimony I can give you on that exact fact, backing up what you have to say. Tell folks what you told me off air.
Well, I believe that what they've done is they've taken hip-hop and they've made it glorious to be a drug dealer. You know, when I sold drugs, I hid. I didn't want anybody to know I sold drugs. But now they got these guys who've never sold drugs, technically. You know, one guy was a correctional officer who goes by the name of Rick Ross now. He took my whole identity, and the court said that he could do it. That he could prance around the country and say that he's me and take my whole life and use it, and there was nothing I could do about it. I can't stop him.
He even grew a beard just like you.
Everything. So now they take these guys, and these guys say, well, I got to the position that I'm in right now today by selling drugs. So the message that it tells our kids is that if you go out, you sell drugs, then you can become a great rock star like myself and never go to prison. And I think that that's a false message to be given people who feel hopeless.
And notice they don't indict the people that are fake and claim all that. No, they want them out there like a lanternfish has that light to get the little fish to swim over so they can eat them.
Exactly, and that's what I believe. I mean, if I were to go on tape and say, oh yeah, I sold 300 kilos of cocaine, and now you got me admitting that I did that, they would indict me for it. But the way they're doing it now, they're saying it's just art form. It's just a form of art, and I believe that it's sucking in our kids, and you know, you turn on the radio and it's just filled with it.
What do you want to say to Rick Ross? Because he'll probably see this video. Well, the fake Rick Ross.
I would tell him that it's time to change, that it's time to tell the kids the truth, you know, and let them know that technically he's never sold drugs, and that he didn't get his money from selling drugs, that Universal gave him the money to do the things that he's doing, that it's okay to admit that you never did that, and not let our kids believe that they can go out and sell drugs and never pay a penalty for doing that.
Does it make you angry to see him doing that?
Well, really, the whole culture. I mean, I'm disappointed in the whole culture. Really, not really him, because I don't think that he understands what he's doing. To him, I believe that he's making a living, and he's almost like I was when I sold drugs. So he don't understand the...
But you were actually doing it and taking the risk. He's out there selling this culture and this idea where young kids are going to go out and get their lives ruined or killed. In my book, that's a lot worse than what you did.
It possibly...
At least you had your butt hanging out there.
Yeah, and they're getting it to maybe even more people than I did. I mean, you know...
Well, notice, though, even though these guys are fake gangsters, they're always getting shot up and killed because real gangsters come after them, or other people that think they're gangsters come after them. It's totally sick.
It is. But then, you know, you go to our schools, and guess who you hear on the radio? Playing on in a high school gym on the turntables. Guess who you hear on there? Jay-Z.
Well, I'm glad you're speaking to high schools and colleges. We need to get you to just thousands of them. We need to shut this down.
Well, you know, and you say that it's harder for me to get in with my message than it is for them. They'll pay these guys $100,000 to come there and tell the kids how much drugs they sold and how glorious it is to sell drugs, and they don't even want me on campus.
Because you're going to tell them, it's the government, it'll ruin your life, don't touch it. And by the way,
you're going to go to prison forever if you don't.
And it's that message that'll keep kids off drugs. Not the one of, oh, it's sexy and fun. You want to get involved in this. This is how you really start rolling and getting all the chicks and everything. No, you're not going to get any of that. You're going to end up getting TB in a prison cell.
Exactly. And get your lights cut off at 7 o'clock at night. Told when to get up in the morning, when to go to bed, and how to live your life.
It makes me sick.
And they're going to give you a job. Or you can't get a job on the street? Oh, well, they got a job for you in prison. It's called Unicor. And you're going to make money, prison money, 25 cents an hour. And the job that you're going to be doing, skillful job. Because people on the street, well, they get $35 an hour to do that same job. But we're only going to give you 25 cents. But that's all you need. Because we're going to feed you, house you, we wash your clothes for you. You have nothing to worry about in here.
And then the good old boys sit around going, I hear they got hot tubs and cable in them prisons. I say make them work. And then they wonder why their son or daughter can't get a job in a factory because the factories are all built on the side of the prisons.
Absolutely.
For 25 cents an hour.
Yep. And then they charge you as much as 50 cents a minute for a phone call.
So you got to work 2 hours to talk to your wife or your girlfriend or your son or daughter for 2 minutes.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, visits, they only let you visit twice a week.
It is such an evil plan.
And then you may be like I was, where your family is in L.A. and they got you in Texarkana, Texas. So you may only see your family once a year, if you're lucky. If you're lucky.
You look like you're about to cry thinking about all those kids getting sucked in by those spiders run by Universal and all the rest of them. I mean, they're setting up webs to catch kids and put them in that prison.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When they got what they call now, I just spoke at a conference in San Francisco. They call it from Head Start to the prison pipeline. So they say they can tell right now. They got people that say they can tell right now a kid that's in kindergarten if he's going to prison.
Well, I read a report, it was in mainstream news in New Mexico about 2 years ago, that the biggest prison corporation in the world was financing security at the school and was there admitting they're preparing those kids to go to prison. That the whole thing is just an induction pipeline right into the prison.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe it. I mean, how would people stand around and go for something like this here? I can't do it.
Well, there are people like Professor Griffin and others that are exposing what's happening in hip-hop.
Yeah, yeah. I spoke to Professor Griffin. We're planning on doing some things together.
Yeah, he's a really great guy. Army veteran, really smart guy, trying to expose what's happening.
Well, the record labels are not going to touch those guys, though.
Even though they're the real pioneers of hip-hop.
Absolutely. But he can't get a record on the radio. Totally underground. It's going to be up to us, the people in the streets, like, what you're doing right now. I mean, mainstream won't touch me. They won't give me an interview. They won't talk to me. A drug dealer in my studio? Never.
Instead, you're the real Rick Ross saying don't use drugs. And they got the other Rick Ross running around making kids think it's sexy, and they want him in the schools. That's because the spiders want to get those kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Stay there. I want to come back, get into anything else you want to cover, and take phone calls, and I'll tell you my story about the inside. Rick had more he wanted to say about, quote, dumbing down. He was describing it like, well, I guess training wheels on the kids right into prison. Get more into that, Rick Ross. We're talking about hip-hop and how they program the kids on how they're supposed to act.
Well, like myself, Alex, they made me believe that I was dumb, that I couldn't read. And, people ask me all the time, who was it? Was it my mom who didn't teach me how to read? Was it the school? Well, I don't really know. But what I do know is that I had come up with a mentality about myself that I was dumb, that I was stupid, that all I should be was a thug. And that thugging was cool. And when I looked around from my prison cell and I started to look at all my friends, that they all thought the same way. And it was this programming that put us in this position that dealing drugs and gangbanging was easy for us to accept. and I believe that hip-hop is doing that right now, but on a more massive scale. The kids now, they wear their pants like we used to. They talk the things that we used to.
They're ready for prison.
Absolutely.
They're ready to be punked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's at an all-time high right now.
It must be a joke to the CIA mind controllers to have the young guys already wearing their pants saying, hey, I'm ready to be raped. I mean, they must be really proud of the masterful job they've done. And now they're deploying that hip-hop culture into everything. It's taking over.
Oh, absolutely. Endorsements. I mean, big companies, companies that wouldn't touch that type of lifestyle before, is all over. Right?
They don't want to have kids wearing sports jackets and doing well and you've got a future and you're no, you're crap. And now the rock and roll music's, oh, we're all dead. We have no future. Humans are crud. They need us to feel bad about ourselves and that we're hurting the earth, so we roll over and basically become slaves.
Absolutely.
Other points you wanted to make before we go to break.
And that's the point that I believe right now that our kids are in, and that's why I'm out here on the streets working to let them know that I couldn't read, but I eventually started doing law. I found the issue that eventually helped me get out of prison. So, I wrote a book now. And
you're here warning people about drugs right now.
Absolutely.
And that's what matters is you've changed. You understand what you did wrong. And that's more valuable than somebody that never even went through the trials and tribulations. You're a veteran.
Right.
A veteran of this tyranny, and you're here seeing through the matrix now. That's a beautiful thing. It's like Christ is on the cross, and he's there next to the thief and everything, and the thief apologizes, accepts it. His heart's right, and Christ says, tonight you'll be with me in paradise. But the soldiers and everybody, they just went along with it.
Yeah.
They think they're winners in this world, and they're not.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got to warn the young people to never use drugs the first time. I mean, marijuana is a gateway, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't decriminalize it just so they can't throw you in jail. But the whole drug culture is ruining people, and the prescription drugs are pushing on kids in the schools are worse than the illegal drugs, and just stay away from them and realize you're not empty if you get bad grades. And then, so you got to go to the dark side. You're not empty just because you don't have a bunch of money. You can paint, you can do music, you can go out and help people. That's what's going to empower you is going out and standing up to bullies, not just feeling bad because you don't live like people on television.
Yeah, we all can't be on television. It's crazy that they tell us that, if you don't have a pair of Air Jordans, that you're not special.
Well, I mean, I was happier before I had all this responsibility and was, quote, on radio and TV and barely had money to buy 3 pairs of shoes a year, even though that was rich compared to poor people. I mean, I was totally happy. I was thinking back to the years when I was, out of high school and stuff, and my parents were giving me no help because I didn't ask for it, really, and I was so poor. It was the happiest time of my life without all these responsibilities and the rest of it. And I'm not saying people shouldn't become successful. It's just that what matters is that you're a good person. That's the real value.
It is. And that you care about others. Because when you don't care about other people, then I believe that you're the worst. And a lot of people that's in power right now, they don't care about anything but your dollars.
Like they enjoy hurting people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a diabolical plan to ship heroin in to get millions of Americans addicted from the 50s on, and then to bring in cocaine, weaponize it as crack, which is a CIA recipe that was declassified, and to deploy it right into black neighborhoods. I mean, that's a nasty thing to do.
It is, absolutely. To a people that doesn't have, that's hopeless.
And then to sell them thug culture, because let me tell you, I'm downtown Austin, and there's, basically I call them black Klan members, whatever, just black thug culture. There's white thug culture as well, but they've been sold it's okay to hate white people. I mean, but I see the plan, though. I see the whole programming to make them like that and to make them hate me, and then I realize how it's all to divide everybody so the system can manage us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's diabolical.
Absolutely.
That is sick. That is mind control. So we've got to transcend it, ladies and gentlemen, and defeat it. We'll get your take on what I just said when we come back. Rick Ross, and go right to your phone calls and your Twitter questions. I'll stop hogging him right now. His website is IamTheRealRickRoss.com.
We're on the march.
We got talking about fluoride in the water. What was the other point you wanted to make, you were saying?
I lost my thought, man.
We're having the real discussions here during the breaks. I've thought so many times for the TV audience, I ought to have a button I can hit whenever I'm not eating or making a phone call where we can put live cams in here during the breaks.
Yeah,
because that's where the really good discussions are happening.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. But we done touched on so many good points, man, and I'm just excited, that you had me here and that we touching on some of these points. One of them too. Obama, he wrote in the 18-1 crack law. Where it was 100-1 for crack and powder, where it already been proven that powder and crack are identical drugs, except one is smokable and one is not smokable. So about a year ago, they changed it 18-1. But they should have made it 18-1, and then they should have made it retroactive. Say if a guy's been in jail 25 or 30 years, but if it was 18-1, he would only got 5 years in prison. So they would owe him some time. He would be released.
Well, I totally agree. If you're non-violent, you should be released, period, because the government shipped it in to begin with. It'd be like if your judge was the guy that sold you the cocaine, and then now he's presiding over sending you to jail for life. That's what it is. It'd be like if Hitler ran the Nuremberg trials. I mean, it's pure bull. I mean, end it.
It is. And then they own the prisons.
I remember, I've talked to 2 major rock stars, and it's not the 2 that you've heard on the show. I've talked to 2 major rock stars, and then I've talked to some hip-hop folks. They all say that they've heard the same stories, and some of the memos have come out about the CIA behind rock and roll to create the revolutions, behind bringing the LSD in. That's been declassified. But in the early 90s, they said, look, rock's going to be dead. Get ready. We're going to bring in hip-hop, and we're going to gangsterize it. This is from the guys upstairs. The government wants this. Sumner Redstone at Viacom has been ordered to do this. And big managers and people were all brought in, and they said, you better start flipping to this. That's why you saw a lot of heavy metal guys start doing rap albums and getting other folks in with them and things, because they were told, we're going to play these on the record and we're going to put this on the air. And then I talked about my personal self. I experimented here and there once or twice with hard drugs. Always had such horrible hangovers that I, methamphetamine a couple times, cocaine a few times. I'm on record about that. I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
I've always been a nicotine alcohol type guy, and that I've transcended pretty much as well. Don't even smoke cigars anymore because I always get back on cigarettes when I do. But long story short, Sheriff McWhorter, who later got busted, he was flying drugs into the Rockwall Airport. We lived in the richest county in Texas, right outside Dallas, Rockwall on the Lake. And I would be at affluent people's houses for a party when their parents are out of town. The cheerleader down the street's having a party. All the 14-year-olds are over there. And then there'd be the 16-year-olds and the 18-year-olds would come over, wild parties, pool parties. And the police car would pull up. And then they'd come in and go, we got the weed, we got the ecstasy, we got the methamphetamine, we got the... And I'd be like, whoa, whoa. And because they had money. And so many times the cops in cars would deliver the drugs. So I'd get pulled over a couple years later when I was driving. This is why we had to move to Austin. I've told that this has been in Esquire. It's been in Texas Monthly. They didn't believe a lot of it. Went and checked and went, wow, there were a bunch of busts in the Rockwall PD and the county and flying in cocaine.
I remember that. It was in the newspapers and I read it.
So they were flooding it with drugs, and they would want to search my car, and I'd go, man, I saw you 2 years ago deliver drugs. And they would beat me up, take me to jail, threaten to hang me, told my dad's lawyer, move out or we're going to kill him, basically.
Yeah.
And a couple years, we moved out, and then later the feds came in and busted them. But again, that's the big drug dealer busting the little drug dealer.
Yeah, well, that's why they don't like you, Alex, because you're gonna keep it 100. You're going to let them know exactly what's going on.
Well, I wasn't saying anything about the cops stealing drugs till they wanted to search me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you're a drug dealer. Leave my 6-pack of beer alone. Oh, look, like under the truck seat, those Silverados had the seat that lifted up in the middle.
Yeah.
And there was the 6-pack. We weren't even drinking and driving. We were going to a party. And they're like, all right, I got you, minor in possession. I was just like, you're a drug dealer. And
almost like the fox watching the hen house, huh?
Well, yeah, it's like, you're a drug dealer? You're going to give me a ticket and take my beer? Those cops would just go, ugh! They arrested me 3 times doing that.
Wow.
They would beat me up that bad. They'd slam my head in the wall, and they'd take me there and go, listen.
They didn't beat you with a flashlight?
No, you've been beat up before.
I've been beat with a flashlight while I was handcuffed, and let the dog bite me while I was handcuffed. I mean, these guys are wow with these, what do you call them, cowboys?
Yeah.
These drug enforcement agents, they're just out there, man.
Most of them are dealers.
Yeah, running rampant and ripping off the public. Because they're not solving the problem.
Well, now they're so arrogant, even the New York Times reports on it, they're taking people's cash out of their wallets that have no criminal record, no drugs. They just go, oh, $2,000 in your wallet? Bam, I'm taking it.
Well, you know, Gary stopped that, too. You remember they used to have a forfeiture? Remember the forfeiture law?
He got it kicked out of the states, yeah.
He made them change their forfeiture laws. You know, before they could pull you over and say they found a joint in your car, and they could take your car and forfeit it. When you go to court and the court throw your case out and you never go to jail or never found guilty.
He did get it reformed, but now they came back where the feds federalize it and they do it now through the police. But Gary did do so much. He didn't know he was dealing drugs for the CIA until it came out in court because the operative that his was a supplier from the Air Force Base hadn't told him that. So I don't mean to answer his question for you, but I mean, what motivated you to deal drugs? I think you said that. Money, right?
Poverty, money. Yeah, I was tired of my mom struggling and not having food in the refrigerator. There's been days that me and my brothers and sisters woke up and there was nothing in there to eat.
I've got a question to ask you. Thank you, caller. I appreciate it. I'm not trying to be mean. He just answered that. What does your mother think, kind of like that Scarface story, what does your mother think when suddenly you had all this money?
Well, you know, my mom put me out of the house when she first found out I was dealing drugs. You know, my mom was a diehard Christian. And, first thing came to her mind, oh, you're going to hell forever. So she threw me out the house. But when she did, I was already ghetto rich. I had $100,000. So everybody in the neighborhood wanted me to come to their house and stay. But eventually, she started to succumb to the money. You know, I bought pulpits for the church and air conditioners, and, you know, I remodeled her house where she didn't have holes in the floors and had exterminated, you know, put the tent over to get rid of the rats and the roaches. And I was still her son. So no matter what happened, you know, she still loved me and adored me. So our relationship never changed.
That's right. There's nothing more powerful than the flesh. Flesh of my flesh. They got rid of alcohol prohibition. Now they brought in this new prohibition. And now they want to grab our kids. And it's just, there's never enough. And they laugh on TV and passed Obamacare. That's a giant screw job. I mean, this thing is out of control. They're killing the golden goose. Rick Ross, how do we stop the drug war?
I think what you're doing right now, Alex, is a start. This is how you got to get started. Because, you know, you're talking about fighting the 1,000-pound gorilla. And you're not going to whoop him, you know, just going head up with him. And you got to sit down and think and talk like Alex is doing right now. And, you know, most people don't even want to talk about these issues. You know, most.
That's right. You got to force it out there till everybody knows. And it's starting to happen.
Yeah. And once you start to do that, then you can start attacking it, because when people are dumb, and remember how I was dumb, illiterate. You know, I never read a book, you know, never heard of Alex Jones or nothing. I didn't know anything. So anything that somebody brought to me, I went for it. You know, they bring it to you. Oh, this is for you. It's good for you. Take it and use it. And this is how you do it. And then you find yourself caught up in stuff that you never thought you could have been.
Well, see, my dad and mom were big into history. And so my dad would tell me when I was young, no, the government brings in the drugs. Here's the Big News Brzezinski's book where he admits it. And when you're old enough, read it. And I mean, and I just thought everybody knew this stuff, and then there were the police dealing drugs, just like my dad said, and then I've had Serpico on. What do you think about his story? You know, police shot him in the face.
Yeah, I mean,
because he didn't want to deal drugs.
I mean,
he said the entire New York narcotics department then were all dealing drugs.
Wow.
I said, what percentage? He said 100%.
Wow.
Everyone he knew. And then he was even letting them deal the drugs. He just said, and they still tried to kill him.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
But will we ever see Gary Webb's third book, the person says second, but would have been his third book, put out by InfoWars, The Real Rick Ross? Yeah, I tried to reach out to the family, but they were so scared they never talked to me after they killed him. Whatever happened to that book?
I don't know. I mean, you know, I was still in prison when all that happened,
maybe you're the guy to reach out to the family. Have you talked to him since the movie premiere?
No, not since then. I spoke to the wife at a link. You know, we talked for about 15 minutes because it's the first time that we had time to sit and talk outside of prison. When I was in prison, I spoke to her on the phone. So maybe I should. I got her phone number now. So maybe I'll reach out to her and ask her if we can get those notes.
Well, he had a whole book written, and he sent me a disc, but it got lost and everything.
Would you be willing to help do that?
Listen, the last time I talked to Gary, I was busy. I said, man, everybody knows the government deals drugs. I've had you on the show. I want to get you on again. He's like, no, not till my book's out. And then he called back a month later. He goes, listen, I gave you all those documents. Put them up on the site. You know, I need somebody to put this stuff on an internet site. And I was like, okay, but, and then he was like, he didn't really cuss a lot. He's like, damn it, when you're ready to do something about this, you give me a call. Bang. And
I'm sure somebody probably got those notes now, though. I'd be surprised if his wife still has that stuff.
But he was passionate. I mean, he was telling me, you need to get up.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Gary was willing to. I mean, Gary told me before that people have died for going down this road. You know, I mean, he's like, hey, Rick, when you go down this street here, you know, like I know going down the drug street selling drugs, you could get killed. Well, Gary told me that there's been people that went down the same road that he was going down that gotten killed. He told me that.
Yeah, people like Gary Webb are true modern-day heroes, and so are you. You are redeemed. I know that. I can feel it in my heart.
My question to you is, had you ever been shaken down by the mob for making as much money as you did? Because they always want a cut.
No, I wasn't.
That's because they obviously knew that you were a CIA conduit. the little mob doesn't mess with the real mob.
No, they don't.
I mean, I shouldn't speak for you. Why do you think they left you alone?
Well, you know, it's obviously I had ties that was too big, even for them, you know, and I probably got rich so fast that you know, if you wasn't inside, you really didn't know what I was doing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. All these fake rappers say run around and show your wealth off. You're going to get arrested in 10 minutes acting like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, real drug dealers, folks, real mob chiefs and people are living in small houses and gated communities, keeping their head down.
Yeah, nobody, if you didn't know me, you didn't know I was rich. I mean, my family, they started to know that, and they didn't know how rich I was. They knew I was wealthy, that when they called me for rent money and repossession money to get their car back, that I could do that. But they didn't know that I was making, you know, $3 million a day and how much drugs I was selling. They didn't understand that. So the general public didn't know. Blandon knew, but everybody else didn't really know. So,
and I love how they came back to burn you later just to tie up loose ends.
That was really crazy to me, you know, how they would take the guy that was supplying all the drugs. You know, Michael said it in the movie. I mean, it was one of the parts that I really liked about my character is that Danilo was Santa Claus and I was an elf.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
oh boy, thank you, caller. Great question. Rob Dew was in a store. One of our, I think it was Rob Dew, told me about it. I saw the report they did, and they have a Who's the Meth Dealer? Breaking Bad, #1 show for a while.
Yeah,
I never really watched it. And they had he's a meth dealer toy for kids, and he has meth in his suitcase. So the kids go and buy it, and then, you know, they go out and imagine they're a meth dealer.
Wow. I heard about the show, but I wouldn't watch it. I'm like...
I wouldn't either, because I knew, and of course, it made meth get even more popular.
Absolutely. You know, they show a guy that breaks bad, and everybody accepts it, and he gets... I think that show got so many awards that it was crazy. But that's the same thing that happened with me with Superfly. I see a guy that just like me, who's down on his luck, and things are not going well for him, and cocaine makes everything right for him.